The Grand Central Sports Hub, episode 3.5. Good evening from Dumont, New Jersey. Seth Cantor with you, JZ, down in the heart of Austin, Texas. Welcome. Got a good episode here today. We'll have Howie Karpin, the official scorer, the longtime official scorer for the Yankees and the Mets. He's been with Major League Baseball for 22 years, since 1998. He's also a national update anchor, who I know very well with Sirius XM, also a statistician at the Garden since 2008, and a writer for New York Sports Day, as well as an author. He's got a lot of books and one coming out soon, which we're going to talk to him about the Rangers. We'll also take your comments after Howie joins us. We're also going to let you chime in. The team seem to be engaging their fans on social media by allowing them to choose isolation houses with their 5 favorite players. So we're going to choose some of our favorite isolation houses with the teams in the New York metropolitan area. Jason, good evening to you. How are you tonight down in the heart of Texas?
Good evening to you. I'm good now that we could get some time away from the real world and just talk some nerdy baseball talk. That'll be fun. Then some goofy isolation house talk. That'll be wonderful. And whatever else we come up with. It's a nice break from reality.
It is a nice break. So baseball, so I'll say this. It's nice, given everything that's going on in the world, it's nice to know that we're talking about, not even from a sports perspective, but being here in New York. I don't know the situation down there in Texas, but it's nice from a New York perspective that at least we're having conversations now about how the economy will be restarted, right? It's not going to be today. It's not going to be tomorrow. So I have to tell myself on a daily basis, when I listen to Cuomo, when I listen to Phil Murphy, when I listen to the CDC and everybody else out there, it's nice to know that we're having conversations about restarting. So baseball's actually having some conversations about restarting. Nothing that's really been confirmed, but more acknowledged. So I want to get your take on baseball's potential return. Jason, it starts with this. It started with a report from Ken Rosenthal the other day. ESPN, as they usually do, picked up on it. So it's a plan that involves all 30 teams playing in the Phoenix area, including Chase Field. No fans. Players would be sequestered in hotels. They would travel to and from the stadiums only. And it's something apparently that the CDC and the National Institute of Health, they're supposedly on board with. Major League Baseball reportedly hasn't settled on this plan. It's more of a contingency right now. But if they were to do this, it would involve ways of social distancing, including an electronic strike zone, no mound visits by catchers. It would be 7-inning doubleheaders. You'd also have on-field microphones because fans would be tuning in. You want to make it as engaging as possible for the fans. Kind of a wrinkle that I don't know if I necessarily like, although I won't be there, so who am I to critique on it? The players wouldn't sit in the dugout. They would sit in the stands from each other 6 feet apart. So if this were the plan, let's say this were the plan by Memorial Day, how would you react to this plan?
First of all, everyone, if you're a business owner or a politician, you're responsible for something, you need to have a restart plan, right? So the government talking about restart, commissioners talking about restart, you have to always have a rolling plan. So I have no problem with the ideas of what we could do, throwing around ideas, because that you're responsible for your business. So you kind of have to. However, this one's a bit of a reach. And the least of my problems are the no fans. I think that's probably realistic when sports comes back. But now you've got an integrity of the game issue with bringing back baseball, and did you say some rule changes would be different as well, Seth?
Yeah, electronic strike zone, no mound visits by at least catchers, from what I read. 7-inning doubleheaders like they do in the minor leagues. I'm quite used to this, actually. I'm actually not against that, believe it or not. I think you can serve your pitching staffs that way, although I think with a compressed schedule, you're going to have to play a lot of doubleheaders, so I don't know if I like that as a long-term solution. And then the players, instead of using the dugouts, I guess it's not a big deal as long as the players are there playing, they would sit in the stand 6 feet apart. So I guess a few feet away from each other.
But if you are worried about social distancing in a dugout for a team, you have no business playing sports at that point. I mean, if this is a problem and you're still concerned about it, you shouldn't be playing the game. It doesn't make any sense. Oh, let's go out there, play baseball, change the rules, and mess with the integrity of the game. But when you're in the dugout, make sure you guys are 6 feet apart. What happens when a guy slides in the second and pops up and they hit each other? or bang bang play at the plate. You can't. You need to stop it. Yeah. So this is really pushing it in my mind, and that's the on-field thing. Now let's back up to the teams being sequestered. I hate to break it to you, but the Players Association isn't going to go for these guys being away from their families like that. I don't see it. That's a whole nother problem. So you've got like an on-the-field issue. You have a logistical off-the-field issue. And by the way, if you didn't know, Arizona in the summer is like sitting on the surface of the sun. It's a bit of a problem.
It's extreme. I don't like it. And my preference would be, first off, there are a lot of variables. Let's take this piece by piece. Let's leave my opinion out of this. There are about 7 or 8 different variables that I just mentioned, and they all have to go right for this to work. The plan is a reach in my mind. Now, I told you last week that I wanted to see baseball, and I wouldn't complain as to how baseball or any sport came back, because right now there's nothing to watch. But I will say there are a lot of variables here, and there's some variables that I just don't think can go right. I would rather sit here for another month because things are turning in New York now. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an economist. I would rather sit here for another month and let things get to some semblance of normalcy. Let everybody restart, get back to normal life, let's say by July 4th, because I think that's what it's going to take at this point. You're not just going to flip a switch and everything's going to go back to normal right away. That's why I seem to think the NBA and NHL seasons are finished. I just think they're done. I think by the time you restart, it's going to be too late. Let's just move on to the 2020-2021 season, and we'll all remember this year for what it was. But for baseball, I still think you can have a season, an effective season, if you start at July 4th. And if you play an 81-game year in 85 days, teams get 4 days off, you expand the rosters, and then go to a normal playoff format. And I think people will look at that as a real baseball season. I just think too many things have to go right. Then you talk about TV money, their economics of this, there's travel. I think this is more of a plan B on baseball's part, and that's the sense I got by reading what baseball had to say about it. But I'd rather, if it were me, I'd rather wait another month to 45 days to do it right. This, to me, is a stretch.
Yeah, it definitely is a little bit overboard. I get it. You got to try to work on different plans. I understand it. They are beholden to try to get this business up and running. At the end of the day, money, right? Baseball's trying to make money. They're trying to play games. Yeah. So Manfred's got to try, but this one is a little much for me, and I just don't see it seeing the light of day. I hope not anyway. I don't like it.
Baseball it seems to me, based on what I'm reading, it's more of a contingency than anything else. And so for me, all right, you get into July and you get into August, and let's say you heard President Trump say he wants fans or thinks fans could be back in the stands by April or September. You're still going to go with the electronic strike zone? Are you still going to go with 7-inning doubleheaders? Are you going to have these rules in place when things get back to normal? I think these rule changes are potentially so drastic. I think you got to pull back from them at some point. So in my mind, I think it's extreme, and I'd rather wait for July 4th. Fresh start, 81-game season, play it through, get a normal playoff format. If you go until mid-November, late November, if you have to, then you push it back by a couple of weeks, that's fine. I think it's better than this plan.
Yep, try that July plan. If it works, that's awesome. If it doesn't, we'll see you next spring.
Got you. All right, so we have a suggestion before we go to Howie Karpin. Joshua Cox actually have a suggestion. You see our new little ticker that we have down here. Josh Cox chiming in. Your ticker should show all the postponed games scheduled for the day. It's not a bad idea.
I like it. That. Hey, Seth, can you try to get the standard def view back? The one we used?
Why? You don't like it the way it is right now? Yeah,
it's got that black border, and my new tech behind me doesn't look right either.
Oh, I think it looks good. It looks like you're in a psychedelic kind of setting to me.
It just looked different than before. I don't know. See what happens.
Right, I'll work on that.
Not to be the tech director.
I like how you see in radio where our next guest and I happen to work. Usually they tell you that in your headphone. You don't talk about these production issues live. See, what I like about you is if there's a tech issue, you call me right out on the air.
We're learning. We're learning as we go. And if we don't, every show is an experience. Speaking of, we're getting criticized for changing the time today. There's a reason behind it, right, Seth?
Well, I have no sympathy. We announced it. We promoted it. So if people don't like it, don't watch. That's what I have to say. That's
a good point. I absolutely agree. For those on the East Coast, it was 9 o'clock was definitely pushing the bedtime.
It was.
Life. So
it was. So I'm going to roll into our first guest, or our only guest tonight, Howie Karpin. What a gentleman he is. I work with him at SiriusXM. He's been the official scorer for the Yankees and the Mets, been with Major League Baseball for 22 years, started in 98, I believe. He also was a writer for New York Sports Day, statistician at The Garden for more than 10 years. He's an author as well. We're going to talk about his upcoming book. He's had several before this one. And we welcome Howie Karpin to the broadcast. And Howie, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with this. What's your perspective on a potential restart plan for baseball, especially the one in Arizona?
Well, you guys had a good discussion about it in the early going of the show. You know, it made me think of something right off, is that if baseball cancels their entire season, they may be the only one of the four sports to have an entire season canceled. And I don't think they want to do that. Not that they would risk the health of the country for that, notion alone. But imagine if they're the only sport that cancels because you hope by the time the fall work comes around that football will be played and basketball and hockey, the other three major sports in North America. Baseball doesn't really want to have their entire season canceled, but your July 4th, or your July timeline may be workable. They average 30 games a month with the off days. So you get July, August, September, and with double headers, you could roll the regular season into late October or the third week in October if you had to, and start the playoffs in the last week of October. They're rolling into November anyway, a lot of years. So, that's just a thought that came across my mind when you guys were discussing it.
We're joined by Howie Karpin. So I want to dial it back a little bit, Howie. You've seen a lot of great moments. So from a Yankees perspective and a Mets perspective, not necessarily one you've seen as a fan, but what would you say the top moments you've experienced covering each team or being an official scorer for each team?
Oh, there's so many over the years. I mean, Elias gives me my personal numbers every year, which you're proud of that. You're fooling them all these years. So they keep you on the payroll. But I've worked 1,235 regular season games, 34 postseason, including 6 World Series. I always think back to the 0-1 series against Arizona, Game 4, when Tino tied the game in the 9th. The stadium was literally rocking. I mean, shaking. The foundation, you could feel it. It was almost like a mild earthquake. That's how much it shook. And then there's, the whole 9/11 thing back with the Mets. The first game back, I was there. That's the most emotional game I've ever attended. It was an unbelievable night. And then to go to Yankee Stadium that year for the World Series games, it's funny. There's a 30 for 30 out there about George Bush making that first pitch at the stadium in Game 3. When we were in the lower bowels there, with the press, they would not let you move when Bush moved around the ballpark. You had to freeze where you were. You couldn't even go to the bathroom. That's how tight the security was. But anyway, if you watch that 30 for 30, they show you a media line, and there I am standing on the media line, 90 minutes to get in. It was it was unusual at the time. The Met game was the first time that we felt that kind of security. It was unbelievable. The world changed that day. And, there's been a lot of memories since. I've scored some great games. Roger Clemens' 300th win. I scored that Astro combined no-hitter. Those two happened in the same week, within 3 days of each other. That was unbelievable. I've done the Montreal Expos last game. In fact, I'm the only official scorer to name the winning pitcher in a no-hitter, because in that combined no-hitter, the starter didn't go 5 innings. Every other combined no-hitter, the starter got the win because he went 5, or somebody in relief got the win because they were already in the game.
Jason?
Remember the game we went to in 9/11? Was it the ALCS clincher, Seth? I just brought back memories of the security when Howie mentioned how long security was when we had to go to the ballpark and how crazy it was. So through the years, you've been scoring, and I feel like baseball and your job may be the purest job in the world. You're watching baseball, you're scoring it, tremendous game. A lot of our businesses, technology has changed the way we do work. But for yours, has it had any impact in the job of scoring a baseball game?
That's a terrific question. It has somewhat. and then in other ways, no. Now, when there's a scoring call made, the players actually negotiated this into the CBA that they used to have to go through the PR department to get them to write an email and send a video to the league to protest the scoring call. Like, if a batter wants an error overturned to a hit because he wants a hit, the scorer felt it should have been an error. So they send that to the league. Now they have a process where they do it on their own. So I see the appeal letters when the call is actually debated to a point. There's some calls you just get rid of because they're egregious. They don't make sense to overturn. And then there's ones that are debatable. Those are the ones that go to like Joe Torre, because he was the one who used to make the final call. This year was going to be Chris Young, the ex-pitcher for the Mets and pitched for the Royals. He's involved with that now. But anyway, in some of their arguments, they're using exit velocity and all this stuff. And, the guy was shifted out of position, so he shouldn't catch a ground ball right to him because he's a shortstop playing on the second base side. I mean, these are the arguments you get. So they're trying to use the technology for the argument. Now, in the other sense, MLB's developed a thing for us scorers to actually go back. We could watch every pitch of every game and see the different angles on scoring calls. They give us like 5-6 cameras to see the angles so we can, have a little more insight into making a call. But for the most part, if you've been doing this long enough, it's your first instinct that usually, is what you go with.
I really like the idea of the angles and using the cameras to help. It is so hard with those other exit velocities for you to score a game in real time and then have that thrown at you a week after the fact. It's pretty wild. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, well, with all due respect to all these new stats, if I'm at a ball game, I don't need exit velocity to tell me the guy hit the ball hard. I have ears, and we have to, judge that whether that ball was hit hard enough to where the fielder couldn't play it. Look, if a guy hits a line drive 190 miles an hour right at a guy and he has a glove, catch it. I mean, that's what it's for. I don't care how hard it was hit. That's what sometimes these players and the agents you got to remember, not just players that file these appeals, hitting coaches, agents. I've had a few Scott Borases in my time, believe me. But,
wow.
Like I said, you're at a ball game. I mean, the guy hit it hard. Where you really need the replays for a scoring is those outfield plays when they go to the wall, where you have to kind of see how much room they really did have because you're so far away and things like that. And here's another thing, JZ. On video, you got to remember, you're looking at it on a flat screen, so you lack depth perspective of a call. That's why you really cannot make a more accurate call on a video than you can when you're at the ballpark.
Yeah, that is an error might cost the guy $1 million these days. So stop
we know. Yeah, we know.
Howie, how important is it in your line of work not to take criticism personally? You have players, you have managers, maybe even a general manager or sometimes an owner who takes umbrage with a scoring decision. But how important is it for what you do to have a thick skin?
Very important. And that's one the late Bill Shannon. I don't know if you guys ever heard his name, but he was like the most revered scorer in the entire United States when he was working. That's how much respect he had. And without him, I don't get the job because he was my mentor and he believed in me because in the old days, there was friction between the broadcast media and the print media. There was no WFAN. It was kind of like a civil war. We were actually segregated. The radio guys sat on one side and the print media sat on the other. And when I became a scorer, I started to sit with the print media. So Bill Shannon, was the most revered scorer. And he always said one of the requirements is you have to have a thick skin. I've gotten my share of stuff. When Jeter was going for the 3,000 hits that year in 2011, there was a narrative going around that the scorers were favoring him so he'd get the 3,000th hit at home. So that we were favoring him on certain calls that they felt should have been errors. We were giving him hits. So Bob Raceman of New York Daily News called me one night. He had my number. He'd written about me like 6-7 times. So he called me to get an idea of what the scorers were feeling about Jeter going for the 3,000. If you're at the end, if he's at 2,999 and you're at the end of the homestand, the final game, and it came down to a controversial call, and you call an error, these guys would go crazy because they wanted to write, oh, he got it at home, and then the fans would be on you. Thank God it didn't come to that. But anyway, he wrote, I kiddingly say I had that with 2987, his 2,987th hit. I called it was against the Red Sox. He used to bust, he busted his tail every time down the line. So as a scorer, you got to take that into account because he's making the defense rush. He's making them not feel comfortable because he's busting it. So you take that into account as a scorer. So he hit a grounder up the middle, and Marco Scudero, went to the grand concourse first and then went back to second to grab it. I mean, he went in this circular route. He had to throw across his body. He tried to throw to first. It bounced in the dirt, and his first baseman didn't scoop it. Now, if he scooped it, it could have been a bang-bang play, but also they weren't using the replay, I don't think, back then in 2011. So they wouldn't have replayed it. He was safe. I called it a hit. The next day, there was a quote in the paper, anonymous, of course. Well, with the scoring around here, Jeter will get to 4,000 hits. Yeah, it was in the paper like that. So that's the kind of stuff you get. And then in the beginning, I got challenged because, again, as I told you, it was a civil war between the media and the broadcast and print. Now, a lot of guys knew my face, but didn't really know me because I'd been there since 1980, and I got my first chance at this in 1998. I'd already been there 18 years as a radio guy. So everybody knew me, but I still took some friction, but not the thrust of it. Actually, Bill Shannon and the woman who hired me, Phyllis Merrish, who was the president of the American League at the time, vice president of communication for the American League, they took a chance on me because nobody really knew me that well except for Bill. And then they took a chance on me. I got a game in 98, and then in 99, 10 games in the American League, no National League yet, because the National League was still separate, but they didn't hire me. In 2000, I started doing both.
We're joined by Howie Karpin, official scorer for the Yankees and Mets. More than 20 years. Howie, what do you enjoy most about your job?
Well, I'm part of a major league game. I always had, like anybody who grew up loving baseball, I was a player. I got scouted. Actually went to Florida in 1977 to try out for their minor leagues. Made a trek on my own dime, and we went down there, but we couldn't get signed. But, to be part of a major league game is a thrill, and I don't take it for granted. I've had some great thrills in my career. I grew up in the stands like anybody. I go back to the original Yankee Stadium, my favorite place of all. I love this other Yankee Stadium that they just shut down 10 years ago. I think I was in that building like 1,500 times. So, that's the fun part of it. The people you meet, sometimes you interact with the ball players, which sometimes is not great, sometimes. But, like I got to meet Bob Shepard, and he became a friend. And, all the announcers, the Met announcers kind of talk about me a lot. If you watch Met games, they kind of mention me a decent amount of times. And the Yankee guys, too. We bust chops on each other. So, just being a little iota, a little part of the baseball fraternity is very flattering.
I don't want to focus on the negative, but you mentioned interactions with players. So there's all these stories you hear sometimes, and if you're comfortable with sharing one, has anyone ever called you from like the dugout after a call?
I'll tell you, guy. But
how do they do that?
Now they can text. This happened a couple of years ago at Shea. It was a Met. I won't tell you his name. That's not fair. But that's just a mild story. That was 2 years ago. I had a couple of calls with him at bat in the same homestand, and it was the same kind of play. It was like a grounded to third in the hole, but the third baseman was in position where all he had to do was go to his left one step to catch it, and it went off his glove. So twice I called it E5. So the second time I called it E5, I think after the next half inning or something, the PR guy from the Mets at the time, Jay Horowitz, got a text from the guy that he wanted to meet me after the game. But I'm not allowed to do that without MLB's permission. So I made it clear, to Jay, because Jay agreed. Jay said, look, I don't think this is good. And I said, yeah, especially because MLB doesn't allow it. So I said to Jay, I said, make sure. I said, I'll meet this guy, but MLB doesn't allow me to do it. But I tell him I'm not scared to meet him, but MLB will not allow it. Anyway, that's a mild story. the most famous story is 14 years ago in 2006. Excuse me. A-Rod and Jeter were at the height of their feud, that they didn't like each other. So the Yankees are playing the Orioles on getaway day. They were the next day. They're heading to Boston for a big 5-game series at Fenway. So the last game is an afternoon game against the Orioles, and the Orioles are kicking their butt, really bad, taking a beating. And somehow the starters are still in the game. This is about the 6th or 7th inning. So I'm scoring it. So there's a pop-up to third. A-Rod gets under it, and then all of a sudden Jeter is like right behind him, and A-Rod drops the ball. So I call E5. So the fans all booed A-Rod, And so anyway, somebody came up to me and said, well, you may want to look at the video because Jeter kind of bumped into him. Now, with the scoring rules, if a guy's right under a ball and then the other guy bumps him, prevents him from catching the ball, that guy has to get the error. So I had to change the error to Jeter like about an inning later, but they don't announce that on the scoreboard. So he didn't know he got the error. So anyway, the reporters went down to talk to him about, with the, colliding with A-Rod, so to speak. And he was like surprised he got the error. So I went down on my own accord because it was a controversial call, and I wanted to talk to Joe Torre. I could do that once if I got permission from the PR guy. So Torre said, that's the kind of hinted that's the shortstop's ball, but A-Rod was right under it. What was he supposed to do? Leave? Anyway, so Torre was upset because they lost badly. He didn't like the tone they were taking into Boston, I guess. So I actually spoke to Jeter, and I told him look at the video, and then later on there was like when I left the clubhouse, he never came. He was always dressed when he came out to the reporters, so he was practically ready to leave anyway. So I went under the old bowels of the old Yankee Stadium to this elevator to go back upstairs to do my box score for him because I have to take care of this little, interaction right away because they leave. So I didn't want to, not see anybody and ask about the call because I felt bad about it. But anyway, Jeter then saw me again before I got on the elevator, and he called me over in front of the other reporters, and we were talking again. And I said, look at the video. And he said, you look at the video, like annoyed. And I said, well, you bumped him. I said, that's in the rules. Anyway, the story's not over. A couple of reporters wrote about it the next day. One of my buddies from Newsday, and I love him, Wally Matthews, wrote, Jeter buttonholed me up against the wall, which wasn't true. And then I found out when Ian O'Connor wrote his book, The Unauthorized, the Captain. I don't know if you guys read it. Ian interviewed me about that incident. And then when I read the book, I found out that before the reporters came into the clubhouse, Cashman had a sit down with Jeter telling him, look at the video. Oh, the same language I used. He said, look at the video. You're not, because Jeter like dissed him after the ball dropped. It's like, almost like, fuck you. Excuse me. So anyway.
Okay.
No, it's not a PG show. You're fine.
You're good.
So anyway, Cashman said to him, look at the video. You're not acting like a captain. So I must have triggered that in him when I said it to him afterward, but I didn't know it at the time because I said, look at the video to show him that he bumped into him. But Cashman apparently used the same word. So that must have really peeved him off, And he went to Boston, had a great 5 games. People said I got him mad, so he took it out on the Red Sox.
How about Steinbrenner? Did you have any interactions with Steinbrenner?
I had a great interaction with him. I think we're coming up to the anniversary of the game. Remember when 98 season when Armando Benitez threw at Tino Martinez?
Oh, sure.
Oh, that's my favorite baseball brawl ever, by the way. We got that on a whole show for an hour.
Wait till you hear this. I'm at the game, right? And I told you how they segregated the press boxes where the radio guys sat on one side and the writers on the other. Well, the radio guys were right next to George's box. We would see all the celebrities. They'd have to walk in behind us. That was the entranceway. Otherwise, you went in through the offices. But all the Howard Cosell was there one time. I had it out with him. That's another story. But anyway, we'd see celebrities and Henry Kissinger. I mean, all the celebrities would be in there. But George was superstitious. So when the Yankees were losing, excuse me, he would come out and stand right behind where I sat. I had the last seat in the last row for Sports Phone. And that became my seat for all those years I was on that side of the stadium. So I was there that night, and I'm in that seat. He's standing behind me when this breaks out. So we all stand up, and we're all excited. A brawl's taking place. We're excited, So we stand up, and he's standing. He ends up standing like right next to me, and he starts saying things like we're at a bar watching a brawl. So he goes, "Yeah." He goes, I gotta go downstairs and take care of it. I gotta go downstairs and take care of Peter Angelos. I said, "Yeah, go down and kick his butt." I swear, we were like two guys in a bar, like analyzing a brawl. It was unbelievable. And then there were a couple of times I had interaction with him. There's a picture of me in one of the early yearbooks in 1981 when one of the few times he let a radio guy into his office for one of those press conferences. You actually see me standing there with a sports phone microphone. So yeah, I had a lot of George incidents. Remember Howie Spira?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I knew him.
Winfield issue.
I interacted with him.
What was that like? That was a big deal at the time.
I know two famous criminals in my life, him and David Berkowitz. Yeah, because I went to high school with Son of Sam. He was in my class. He was 16. Yeah,
Howie,
true story. That'll be on my tombstone.
What was it like during that time of the 80s when Steinbrenner just went through managers like you and I probably drink water, hiring and firing basically everybody, bringing Billy Martin back several times? What was it like being around the team at that time?
Tremendous experience. I grew up a lot in the business just by being there. I was there the night that Gossage went off on that tirade, that famous tirade that you could probably find on YouTube. I was there that night. I saw that live and in color. And I was there the night George came down to the press room after everybody was done. A lot of the writers had left. I'd started wrapping up my work, and here comes George in the press room, followed by the PR guy, and he fired the manager. I think that was the night he fired Gene Michael in '81. Yeah. So it became, after that, you couldn't leave without checking. Are we okay? Can we leave? Like things could happen at any time. I was there for a Sunday afternoon game in '84. And a trade came down after the game, which was exciting anytime for a reporter. When you're there, they get a trade. You want to get reaction and stuff. But it was after we've been in the clubhouse already. So we found out they got Steve Trout from the Cubs. When George told Piniella, "Yeah, I just won you the pennant." The guy was crap. He was on the mound the night Mattingly tied the record, but the Yankees got walloped that night. I think Mattingly tied the home run record in Texas. I think that was the night Bobby Valentine left his starters in the ninth inning. It was like 21-4. 26-7, I think, was the final.
I remember Howie. I remember a game Joe Torre was still managing. I don't know if you worked it, but I remember a game like that, and it was while the Yankees were having success. They actually lost 22-0 one night at Yankee Stadium.
I scored that game.
You did?
Oh yeah. And I scored a game. They won 21-0.
Amazing.
But while we're at it, while I'm labeling out my resume here, I've scored 2 unassisted triple plays, including one that ended a game. One of 2 in history. That was at the City Field in 2009.
How many people get to do that?
Eric Bruntlett did it, and I went to Cooperstown a couple of years ago, and there's Eric Bruntlett's uniform in the Philly exhibit.
Jason.
So backing up, what's like a if you're working a game routine, you show up and your procedures, their process, take us in your night.
I have my own set of notes where I keep my own notes. Like I keep the pitching lines, I keep pitch count. I try and, observe what they throw and have little symbols. Keeps me focused on the game. But you can get, as long as you get there and call first pitch, you're okay. But you got to have some prep time. So I need about 20 minutes of prep time. I usually get there an hour ahead of time. And then after the game, you have to file a form, but we may not be doing that anymore. The idea, now is going to be on computers. So I may not have to do that manually anymore, but I'll have to double check it. And I keep my own scorecard. And I also keep I used to keep separate notes so I could fill out that form quickly, because you have to count for defensive statistics as well as the offense. You have to count for putouts, assists, and the errors, of course. I did that 19-inning Red Sox-Yankee game. What was that, 2014, early in the year? That was my first game of that season. What a start, 19 innings. So you got 114 putouts because the Yankees were the home team and they lost. 57 half innings times 3 or times 2.
Have you?
And then you have assist up the yin, so to speak. So yeah, you have to account for all that. Yeah,
that is wild. Now you keep your own scorecard. So I'm really curious. Have you saved all of these, or only certain ones, or is this a personal collection? Do you have?
I have a lot of them. I think during this time I'll try and gather them together and organize them. But I kept the special ones, like the Clemens one. He signed it for me. Those are little fringe benefits that, you're not supposed to ask for things, but when there's special things, like the Astro PR guy wanted a copy of my scorecard for their archives. I think that was the first combined 6-pitch pitcher no-hitter, which has since been tied. But he wanted a copy of my scorecard and my box score form. The box score forms go to Elias. That's where they get their statistics, and then they confirm them with other sources. But they wanted my box score form, so I said, okay, get me the pictures on my card. But the only one I'm missing is Roy Oswalt, because he started the game and left after an inning. He was injured, so he left the ballpark. But the other 5 are on the card. In fact, Kirk Sarloos, I don't know if you remember him, but the Astros, he was in that game, and he came on MLB Network Radio and said he should have got the win. I gave the win. That's the game I gave the win to Brad Lidge, who pitched 2 scoreless innings and had 3 strikeouts. I think Sarloos pitched 2 scoreless innings, but I think he gave up a hit and a walk. So I gave it to Lidge.
Those have to be hard to decide sometimes when the starter doesn't go along.
Yeah. Sometimes they dictate themselves, where they're fairly easy. Now, get this. When that situation would occur, some of the media guys would come over because they'd be writing their stories. So they'd come over and ask before the game was over, when it looked like the game's over, even in bottom of the 8th. Yeah, who are you going to give the win to? I can't do that anymore. I'm not allowed because of gambling matters. In those games, they could put a bet on who the winner is, who the winner is going to be. And then if somebody puts it out on Twitter before the game's over. So that started last year. So I had a couple of guys came over early in the year, and I all told them in a civil manner. I said, look, you can complain to MLB, but I'm not allowed to tell you the winning pitcher. I couldn't even tell the guy on my right who was typing in the computer for the statistics. But I mean, if you're a baseball guy, you kind of know who's going to get the win for the most part. That game, was a little tricky.
Howie, you kind of touched on this before. You mentioned the old Yankee Stadium, and you've worked at Shea Stadium as well. Are there any differences, or has your job changed at all? And Jason touched on this, but I guess what do you like better and not like better about the new stadiums as opposed to working in the old stadiums? What are the differences?
Well, in the old Yankee Stadium, they put in like this special seat for the last couple of years, and I didn't like that. It was like it was cordoned. It was in the middle of a row, but it was like raised, and you almost looked like a judge, presiding over a court. I was tempted to bring in a gavel at times, but so I didn't like. I love being in that ballpark, but that kind of turned me off in the last few years. Emotionally, I'm not endeared to these new places. I mean, I was more tied to Shea than I am to City. I'm not a Met fan. I grew up a Yankee fan. And obviously you got to put your fandom aside. But it was a thrill to work in the old Yankee Stadium. It was a thrill to work in Shea. Shea, we used to be on the top row of the press box, and they had these rotisserie lamps for heat. Except if you were on the top, you were closer to the lamp than anybody else. The lower you got, the less heat. So one time they had it on, it was like 65 degrees. I had to go on the microphone. I say, look, I'm turning over. I mean, you got to turn this off. You got to laugh, but I was really boiling. But otherwise, that was fine. And we were closer to the broadcast booths at Shea than we are at Citi Field. Sometimes the broadcasters used to come out and talk to you. Like one night, Jim Cott came out. He's a buddy of mine. I made a call. John Flaherty was running, and Sean Figgins dove up the middle to stop a ball that would have been a hit. And he got up, and he had plenty of time to throw him out. He threw the ball away, and I called it an error. And Cott came over and wanted to know. A lot of guys would call that a hit because he made the dive. But in reality, if you can get up and make the throw routine, you get an error on the throw. Infielders are penalized. They have to catch and throw for the most part. But anyway, Jim Cott came out. We discussed it, and then he went on the air and gave my side. One time, Michael Kay came running out. It was a back end of a double play. The pitcher covered. He's at the bag plenty of time, dropped the ball. That's the only time you can assume a double play. If a guy's at the bag, drops the ball, and there's no doubt the runner would have been out if he caught it, you can call an error. You can assume a double play. Michael Kay came out and told me, you can't assume a double play. I pointed out the rule to him. He took the book and he read it on the air, to his credit. So those are some of the things. At these new places, the booths are a little ways away. They can get to you. At City, they're often, you got to go through a room to get to them. And then at Yankee, they're a little off to the right, a little ways down, and they also have to come out of a separate area. So sometimes they come over, but not as one time Al Leiter came over and Bob Raceman wrote about it because I was so animated in telling him what I had to tell him. I forgot what he asked me about. That he came over and they caught it on camera. They caught us talking together and they ran it during the inning. So, sometimes you get attention that you don't really want the attention. But these guys, it's become where you have to be a diplomat now. You handle all kinds of inquiries, and the media assumes you know the rules. I know the rule book pretty good. I don't know cover to cover where I could just quote you a rule, but I know where to look for it. One time I had a batting out of order, and nobody knew what was going on, and they all came to me, and I got quoted in the paper the next day, which was flattering. But these are the things you deal with now. There's a lot to it. It's not just calling hits and errors.
Howie, you touched on this before. I know you had an opportunity to try out. And you saw a lot of great ball players growing up as the Mets kind of evolved there. The Dodgers and Giants left out, and the Yankees had their run. Who did you emulate growing up? Who did Howie Karpin want to be like when he was playing baseball as a kid going through high school?
Well, Mickey Mantle was my idol. So forget the power numbers, that's for sure. And then as I got older, I liked Willie Randolph's game. Willie Randolph was very cerebral, one of a very smart player, underrated, never made a mental mistake. I kind of patterned my game after him. I was a pretty good outfielder. I loved the way Paul Blair played. He kind of taught me how to go back on balls and things like that. And, you meet some of these guys later on. It's a thrill. I mean, I saw Willie Mays in his prime. I saw obviously Sandy Koufax, broke my heart in '63, and then Bob Gibson in '64. I got to meet Gibson when he was the Met pitching coach the night Mike Scott faced Fernando Valenzuela in '81, which was a thrill. I worked the last game at Shea in 2008. I got to meet Willie Mays for the first time. He was on a golf cart. So, those little things, those little fringe benefits, I don't know if I really emulated myself. I thought of myself as being just a smart player. I thought I could actually be a manager. I thought that's how much I thought of myself as a, cerebral player. I wasn't the most talented physically, but I tried to get the most out of my physical abilities. And I was a pretty darn good fielder, first baseman and outfielder, and became a better hitter in later years. I just enjoy it. I enjoy talking it, obviously, and I enjoy playing, and I'm blessed to have this job. I mean, it's a dream. I can't say it's a dream. I never dreamed I'd be an official scorer, but at least I'm close to a major league game.
So Howie's also an accomplished author. He's got a new book coming out. He's written a few books on the Rangers with Mark Rosenman. But his next book, You Never Forget Your First, a collection of New York Rangers first. It's available on Amazon on April 20th. Howie, where did you get your inspiration? I guess it's a two-part question for the Rangers and being an author.
Well, I grew up watching hockey on TV on Saturday nights, and really got it about when I was 10, 11 years old, really got into it. Never skated in my life. Very rare. I've ice skated maybe twice in my life, but I love the sport. And I was a big Ranger fan. It's like a cult. JZ could tell you it's like a cult, So you're part of a cult because I grew up in the blue seats upstairs in the old days when it was really wild, when they used to do drugs in the corridors between periods.
I wish we could have experienced the blue seats really as they were. I mean, the stories that I've heard from my family as well when I was a young child were wild.
I didn't have a season, but I knew enough people where I could, get a ticket here and there to see some games. And we had a ball. I mean, I loved it. I loved being at the Garden in those upstairs sections and wild stuff on great nights. And, so that's where the love grew. And then I got to cover them starting in 1983 as a professional. And I've had a season credential ever since 1983. So I've been around a lot of games, and it's really been a thrill. I was there when they won the Stanley Cup. I told you before the show, I got to drink out of the Stanley Cup that night. I was at the Mateau game. I was at I was at Messier game, and after the game, I'm standing there with the media scrum, and I'm saying to myself, I'm at one of the greatest games in the history of this franchise. I mean, we were there that night. My jaw dropped because they're losing 2-0, and you knew the history that they don't come back from. They don't do these kind of things, and all of a sudden there they are doing them. I mean, it was such a great experience. And 2014, I went to the finals at the games they lost. And then they won the fourth game finally, and all those overtime heartbreakers. So, it's been a lot of history, and a lot of my friends are Ranger fans. So that's where it grew. And this will be my 5th book with Mark, and I think our 4th Ranger book together.
Give us a little sneak peek for this one, for anyone interested in possibly taking a look.
Well, Ryan Callahan did the forward, if fans want to know. And for the most part, this is a dialogue book. This is in the words of the players. We gave them these questions and asked them their responses. Now, the beauty of the book is not every player has every same first. Obviously, there's a lot of first goals, there's first shutouts, but we have some players with their first Ranger fight. We have some players with their first acting appearance, and things like that, or first TV appearance. So offbeat stuff too, which is kind of cute. And they tell the stories about their childhood because we asked them their first hockey idols. We didn't ask everybody the same questions. Obviously, you don't ask goalies about their first goal. So, it depended on their position too, what kind of questions we asked. But we have 61 current and former Rangers in the book. It's a nice, I guess, look from spanning the decades from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2010s into 2020. So if you're a Ranger fan, I mean, this is in their words. There's some little notes attached to the stories. We tried, and when they say a story or gave you an event, we tried to look up the date. We have the dates listed of what when they did those things at each point. So it's a unique look at how people reminisce about their past careers.
Howie, one more from me, and I know we got to let you go. You always talk about your sports phone days, and I never had a chance to be an anchor during those days, but I've heard some great stories. So for me, I'm really interested to know, what was it like being a reporter back in the days of sports phone?
Well, without patting myself on the back, you did it into a phone, but there was a studio mic when you did it at the studio. But you could do it from anywhere into the phone, as we found out later on, because I proposed an idea to do the sports phone updates right at a game to get that ambiance of the crowd at a game, like you're there. So it came out great. They used to send me to day games. But you get the New York sports phone. There were different sports phones: New York, Chicago, Atlanta, New Orleans, Rochester, there's all kinds of sports phones. But you had a minute tape, but you basically ended up with 50 seconds of sound because you had promos in the beginning, you had a promo at the end. That's how you put in the tape. But it gave a lot of guys opportunities. I mean, the list of alumni there is impressive, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
Howie, thank you so much. I also want to say this. When I started out on WCBS 880 years ago, about 5 years ago, not too long, your wife, Kathy, who I know has a broadcast background, she was one of the first anchors that I did sports reports for, and she was very nice to me. I was really unnerved being my first time on New York City radio, and she put me at ease. So she treated me wonderfully, and I'll never forget that.
Well, I'll tell her that tonight. And I'm very proud of her. She put together a terrific career. She was in the business a long time and worked at a lot of stations. So, this has been a radio family. My son, Danny, JZ, works at KLBJ. So, he's continuing the traditions. Not that I
lives down the street from me. I don't
know. Maybe. So maybe you run into him one day. But it's a pleasure joining. Seth, you're terrific. You're a talented guy. Both you guys. Talented guys. So stick with it. You never know where you end up in this business. I've been lucky to do it 40 years. So
thank you, Howie. Thank you. I also tapped into my Sirius XM connections, and Gallerstein's coming on next week just to piggyback off of you. So thank you.
He's got some memories. He's got some memories. He was he was the PA announcer the night the Rangers won the cup.
I'm not even going to show up next week. Jason's going to do the whole interview. There's no need for me. Howie, thank you so much for your time. Stay safe. Best to you and your family, and I'll talk to you down the road.
You too, guys. Anytime. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Howie. You too. Boy, do the stories get better than that?
That was absolutely fascinating. It puts perspective behind one of the most secretive. I really want to say secretive. It feels secretive, the baseball score, right? The guy making calls. But we really learned a lot of insight here and some wonderful stories of how players or managers or owners react to what goes on based on his decisions. Loved
Absolutely.
it. And I'm going to get that book. The Ranger book sounds fantastic.
Absolutely. Thank you all for bearing through the technical difficulties. We're still learning how to produce our show here, and we will continue to evolve as the days go on. But Howie Karpin, good friend of mine at SiriusXM, really had a lot of great stories to share. Jason, that's one of those interviews where we don't even need to talk. I mean, he's got a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experiences. Those are the best interviews where you can just ask a simple question, get out, and let the subject of the interview be the focal point.
You know what?
Did that.
Nobody really comes here for us. Right? They're here for the guests. We're just pushing it along a little bit.
Anyway, so our next segment, since we don't have sponsors yet and we don't have commercials that are running, our next segment, a lot of teams that we follow, and we're also being accused of a Yankees, Giants, Knicks, and Rangers bias. And we'll try to level the playing field just a little bit. But a lot of teams lately, the trend has been on social media. They've tried to engage their fans by listing a group of 5, 7, 8 potential isolation houses and pick the isolation house that you would like to be in, right? So we're going to bring Diamond Dan in from quarantined Hamilton, Massachusetts.
Back again.
Looks like you still have
He's alive.
How's
right.
Day Infinity? How's Day Infinity, Diamond Dan, at the quarantine up north of Boston?
I don't know. It's still raining. So just feels like it's rained ever since this started, but better safe, stay home. If it rains the whole time, there's nowhere to go. So, it's just a matter of waiting it out and, making sure that everybody's safe.
You like my new fancy background?
It's a little too close to actually see it. So you got to back the camera up a little bit.
It can't. Yeah. Technical parts of this.
But
psychedelic. It's psychedelic.
I did enjoy that interview, though. That was really something.
He had some great stories, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, takes you back to the days of real impactful sports, and soon sports will matter once again. And happy Masters Thursday, first round to you, gentlemen. Should have been today, but if it's going to be in November, we can wait it out, right?
Yesterday should have been the first night of the playoffs for hockey. So
I'm actually watching the 1997 Masters right now. Tom Kite just putted for birdie.
Tom Kite, wow.
Tom Kite. I think it's 97.
It's an IndyCar race on NBC right now. I don't know.
Looks like 97. All right. So, Jason, you collected these, and, why don't we start off with the Mets one, because we have some chippy Mets fans who think that
we do. He's really one Met. I think there's only one, but you know what? That's fine. There we go.
Okay, so we're going to take a look at the isolation houses, and we're going to pick our favorite isolation house. So we're going to try this screen sharing thing. So why don't you give it a whirl?
How's it
JZ
looking?
Screen. Let's pump it up. See if we can get it. Add to stream. Okay, here we go. The Mets with their quarantine clubhouses.
That's a lot of houses. First of all, the Mets having 10 houses, I mean, I'm shocked, but
I didn't even know the Mets had this many players in their history.
Well, I have some concerns with some of these houses already because Mr. Met's in a house.
I mean, this is going to take 2 shows to read all this.
We can't do. All right, hold on. Let's just pick out the good ones.
Cowbell
House 1,
Man.
you got a problem in House 1 already because Darryl Strawberry is going to be sniffing something on day 2, right? And Bertie Madoff is going to be ripping everyone off.
Oh, he gets a house too. I don't even wear glasses, and I need glasses to see all this.
I can't see the comments, but we need Matt to chime in here. But Darryl and Bernie are. I don't think I want to be in house. Do I want to be in House 1? Do you want to be in House 1?
I don't think I want to be in any of the houses.
I don't think Fred Wilpond's in House 2.
No,
so who wants to be there?
I'd want to be in House 4 because Howie Rose is one of my favorite broadcasters. I put Howie Rose just beneath the Vince Scully level in terms of calling a game on the radio, so I'm taking Howie Rose.
You got John Olerud. Actually, that's a good house. You got John Olerud, and you got Bartolo. Bartolo's awesome.
All right. So I'm taking house 4. So which one are you taking?
Oh dear, jeez. What does Dan think?
I'm going with house 6 because Dykstra's in that house.
It'll be a party house.
Oh goodness gracious! And Jose Reyes, but
Benny Agbayani.
Keep his wife away, and we're okay.
Benny and the Mets.
I like
so,
it.
Jason, which one are you taking so we can move on to a real team?
We're good. So I like your decisions, but just to be different. Goodness gracious. I'm definitely not going house 9 because Brandon Nimmo's in house 9, and he's just going to run around after people throw things at him all day and just run around for no reason. You know, I do. Okay. I have a real soft spot for Terry Collins. And if you're not at dinner on time, your ass is going to be in the jackpot. So house 10.
All right. The next time we give the Mets this much time on the broadcast is the next time Yoenis Cespedes gets taken down by another wild boar.
And I'm not hanging out in his house.
That took way too much time. Ryan spell checking in. He says that he'd want house number 6, but he doesn't want Dykstra trying to hustle him on a stock scam.
And you don't want to be in the house 6 because it's going to happen.
Car washes.
All right, let's get to a real team. What do you got, Jason?
Got a Yankee house. You see it? Okay.
I still see the Mets.
Okay, I need to switch it. Sorry, I have to switch it on my
segment.
We're learning. We're learning.
Clearly,
it's okay.
Clearly.
Yankees house. Here we go. You should see Yankees house.
Here we go. All right. Jason's screen is back. Okay. See, the Yankees picked impactful players. They don't just take anybody off the roster to try to justify their existence.
Right? It would be easy to add Billy Martin to a house. Well, maybe not.
Dan, any thoughts?
When I looked at this at first, there are several options, I guess, but I think house 1 would probably be my favorite because DJ LeMahieu would probably keep everything nice and tidy while you're there, while Sanchez cooks and Frazier entertains, and Holder and Ford probably just smash beers the whole time. But
I like it.
Yeah, I think that was my favorite of all of them.
All right, Jason.
I like house 2 has the potential to be hilarious because Brett Gardner's going to run around like a muscle man all day, just banging things against everything and destroying the house. Tanaka is low-key probably the funniest guy on the Yankees. So that interaction with him and Gardner would be insane. Glaber, I'm not sure what Glaber's going to do. And Boone was just basically going to keep things in line. That's a pretty good house. I like house 2, except that I'm not quite sure what Chad Green does either. You know what? Now I'm starting to wonder. Anyway, what do you think, Seth?
I'm debating.
Well, house 3 is interesting because Tommy Kahnle, if you put enough energy drinks in that guy, oof.
Yeah, he drinks a lot of energy drinks, that's for sure.
And then Chapman's just gonna.
Oh boy, I don't know. I'd probably take house number 2. I think there's more maturity as I get older. I don't like partying as much. I just like sitting in my chair, and you have some elder statesmen there with Gardner and Tanaka that I think Boone would keep the peace. So I think I'll take house number 2.
Maybe that's why I went with it also. We are boring.
I think I'll take.
You could go with house 4 and deal with Judge and Happ.
I will say the Yankees list, and our friend Matt will appreciate that I'm criticizing the Yankees. Yes, I do criticize the Yankees. I will say that the Yankees list, it's the current team, and the Mets list was actually a little more original. They had players past and present, and I'm still trying to figure out who I can attach myself to on this current Yankee team. Because, you grow up with guys like Jeter and Birdie and whatnot, but you know what? There are no contemporaries for me that are on this list yet. Yeah, the Yankees have had success, and I root for the players, obviously, but I like the Mets list a little bit better, actually, even though I couldn't read it because it was so small.
I'll tell you this. If CC Sabathia was in a house, I would automatically go to that house.
Yeah, just don't keep your kids in that house because every other word out of his mouth is.
Hey, I don't care. I'm into it. CC has a house. I am in CC's house. No problem.
I guess I would take number 2. The Yankee list left me flat, quite honestly. All right, what else?
Yeah, and it's a little hard because we don't know Garrett Cole's, ultimate situation. He seems really cool, but I don't know if really cool is the reason why I pick a house. So some of these guys, like Kyle Higashioka, has potential to do something, but I don't know. So it's hard to pick. We'll go to our last house. One more house.
Is this the Giants' house?
It's the Giants' house, and this is a good one because it has past Giants. I like this one.
Good. All right, good. Pick one Giants isolation house. All right.
I see a problem. All right, I love Tom Coughlin as a coach. We all love him, right? But he's going to have us up at 4 a.m. doing jumping jacks.
Yeah, that's a problem. I don't get up at 4 a.m. I'm having enough trouble getting up at 7:30 or 8 o'clock now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a hard, fast no for me. So house 2 is out.
See, I like what the Giants are doing. They're taking favorites and they're putting them in separate houses, so they're making you choose.
This is actually a hard. If we do house 1, are we doing a metal detector to get in?
Well, I think with house 1, all I would do is have Eli and Plax just replay replay their touchdown in Super Bowl 42 over and over again. While Bill Parcells cheers him on, Jeremy Shuckey smashes beers, and Saquon wonders what happened. Say, wait a minute.
Saquon just watches in amazement, like, I hope that's me one day.
All right. And then, he could have like a calf off or something like that with Jeremy Shockey. I mean, see who's got the bigger leg muscles.
And
all
then
right,
house 3, Tiki Barber is a douchebag.
Yeah.
Michael Strahan's very likable, so they cancel each other out. Harry Carson, I guess, is the dad. Daniel Jones, I don't know if he has a personality. Yeah.
Apparently he likes to play flip cup, so maybe you got that going for you.
I kind of like house 4, honestly.
Sims,
I don't hate anybody. Sims might talk all. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm taking 1. I barely remember the 86 Super Bowl. The 90 Super Bowl is really the first one I watched, but I didn't have an emotional connection to the team. House 1 has 2 key guys, Manning to Burris, game-winning score. And to me, Parcells and Coughlin kind of cancel each other out. So Parcells is certainly great enough for because he won 2 Super Bowls just like Coughlin did. So I'm going to go with house number 1.
Okay.
I'm going to go, and I think Barkley has the opportunity. He took a step back last year because he was hurt, and I don't think it's possible for somebody to have a follow-up year to what Barkley had in his first year. You knew he was going to probably take a bit of a step back, but he's an incredible talent. So I'm going to take house number 1.
As long as you have 911 on speed dial for the inevitable Plaxico incident, you'll be okay.
It's, what, they sealed that game-winning score, Super Bowl 42. So that's for one. House number 1.
My brother, fun story. I'll bring it all back here. Once sent me when he was stationed in South Korea. Yeah, he wasn't stationed in North Korea, right? When he was stationed in South Korea, they got their hands on some good merchandise, and he shipped me an away Plax jersey with a Super Bowl embroidered patch on it. It got lost in one of my moves, which sucks because it's a nice jersey, and one of the nicest things I've had sent. But Plax. You know what? Too bad that happened with the gun because they could have won that year too. Just threw him off, just ruined the whole thing.
They were having a great regular season. It all fell apart after that.
They really did. Matt wants to know if Jason Sehorn is still alive. I think so.
I think he is.
Yeah, he's married to that actress.
That actress, yeah, the one on Law and Order.
Yeah,
Law and Order.
Whatever her name is.
Any good
Mariska
comments popping out at us besides that, Seth?
Let's see. Yes, we have to get to the comments section of our broadcast as we're getting set to wind down.
Oh, Courtney.
So let's go back from the beginning. David said Jason looks angry. I would be too if no baseball. Are you angry?
No, this is the least angry part of my night. This is when I'm on here with you guys, no anger.
No anger. All right. Let's see. Our fans were, the few fans that we have were very unoriginal.
Fans.
They're very unoriginal here tonight. Josh Cox wanted to know what Howie's best game was that he scored. Howie actually spoke about that in the beginning, so that's why we didn't get your comment on there, Josh. You already brought it up. I'm struggling for comments today. I hope people would step it up next week.
Pop to 80. Go to 802 with Courtney's comment there about the house.
802. I didn't get that. First comment I have is 804.
I vote.
You're talking Central Time.
Sorry.
Central Time. Okay. All right.
902 or 7, whatever the hell it is.
Courtney, I vote to be homeless against any of these houses. Is this for Courtney Cox from Friends?
Yep. Absolutely. Oh, that's awesome.
All right. So, because of my big faux pas last week, which I was texting you incessantly about for 2 hours last week because I felt terrible giving a birthday of somebody who's deceased and thinking he was alive. We are going to go with this day in sports history. So I'm going to pull the birthdays out of the mix, and we're going to go with this day in sports history. On this day in sports history, are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready. I told you to do this segment. I love it.
1912, the first exhibition game at Fenway Park. The Red Sox played Harvard. We don't have a score on that one. 1913, year later, Ebbets Field opened. The Phillies beat the Dodgers 1-0. Okay.
Pitcher's duel.
Pitcher's duel it is. We got some more stuff, more events in sports. Let's see what else looks good here. There is some hockey stuff here for Jason. But 1932 Stanley Cup final, Maple Leaf Gardens, of course, in Toronto. Sorry, Jason. The Leafs beat the Rangers 6-4 for a 3-0 series sweep. Toronto's first Stanley Cup is the Maple Leafs.
Nice.
Sorry for ruining your night there. 1935, another Stanley Cup final in Montreal. The Montreal Forum. The Montreal Maroons beat the Toronto Maple Leafs 4-1 for the 3-0 series sweep. The Maroons were the last defunct team to win the Cup. That's what I know. I thought the Canadiens were around then.
Yeah.
Were they?
I know.
Or were the Maroons? Did they have two teams in Montreal?
It's a good question.
I don't know. I'm not going
to have our. We need a Canada correspondent.
A historian.
Okay. 1959, the Celtics sweep the Lakers, the Minneapolis Lakers, in 4 games. First of the Celtics' record 8 straight titles. 1966, on this day in 66, actually, I think it's an underrated ballpark, and I think it gets a bad rap because it hasn't been renovated in a long time. The Big A, Anaheim Stadium opens.
Yeah, it's a good one. I like that one.
I thought that was a nice ballpark.
They're looking, ultimately, they're probably going to, there was rumors they were looking at Long Beach, California. Nothing will ever get built in California. Stadium.
Move them to Vegas.
Move them to Vegas. We think Oakland's going to Vegas.
Yeah. Just pile them on.
1982, the Lakers blocked 21 Nuggets shots, setting an NBA regulation game record.
21.
1985,
I heard you say Nuggets, and I was thinking about getting McNuggets all of a sudden.
Chick-fil-A. Are you allowed to go out? Are you allowed to go out past 8 o'clock because they don't recommend it here in Jersey?
I don't know. I can't keep track.
1985, Tom Seaver, as a member of the White Sox, starts a record 15th opening day game.
Wow.
Awesome. That's a good stat.
That is good. Nothing will ever see it.
Yeah, not these days.
No.
15.
Jeez.
1993, Colorado Rockies. They play at Mile High Stadium then. First home game, first victory, 11-4 over the Expos.
I forgot they played at Mile High for a little bit.
They did. Totally. Here's one for Dan. 1995, the 59th Masters at Augusta. Ben Crenshaw wins his second Masters title, 1 stroke ahead over runner-up Davis Love III.
Wow. Davis Love still got it. They both, it's good. And it makes you, if you go, I think the Golf Channel or something, maybe it was ESPN, I'm not sure, they were showing the par 3 contest from 2018 last night. And it's, the Masters is, I've never been, friends of mine have been, it's a very special event that really kicks off the spring. And I look for, this year it'll kick off, I guess, the fall, but I look forward to when things resume to normal, because it really is sort of a marker along the way when, the azaleas bloom, and it's like a waypoint towards summer.
Yeah.
So
least we're
Montreal had 2 teams.
They did.
So Matt,
There we go.
okay, so Soriano, Canadians formed in 09, David Maroons and NHL till 38, and they had 2 teams. Now, when were the Maroons disbanded? Now I need to, this is bothering me. Interesting. Carry on.
David, I left the Courtney Cox graphic up. David says the Maroons were in the NHL until 1938.
There you have it.
Okay, until 38. I think that's what I said. Okay. Interesting. Huh.
What else
All
we
right.
got?
I had no idea.
Couple
What are you
more.
looking forward to this weekend?
What am I looking? I wasn't done with today in sports
sorry.
history.
I thought you said what else we got. I was trying to look ahead.
Oh, wait. Well, the barbecue pit probably closes in a half an hour, so you want to wrap up the show.
It never
let's
closes
see.
here.
Dicky's barbecue pit. That's where you're going.
No, I'm not. We don't eat that.
2000, VJ Singh won the 64th Masters,
That was a good one.
beating Ernie Els by 3 strokes.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
And that is about it.
Mm.
That's about it.
Yeah, well, you figure, the next couple of just the way the times fall on the Masters, right? Like over the next couple of days, I'm sure there'll be, highlights of, the big wins, Tigers wins, Phil's win, all that, it'll be at least something to watch on TV this weekend, because probably won't be that much else.
You know what there won't be? So in 20 years from now, when a couple of doofuses are doing a silly podcast,
In the middle of a global
you know what
pandemic,
year they won't be talking about this year in sports?
in 2020.
Josh Cox has a good question. This is an easy answer for me.
Ooh.
Best sports theme songs. Come on. Best sports theme songs for national coverage.
Go ahead.
No brainer. NBA on NBC.
Round ball rock, baby. Josh
I
Hesh.
like it, but just to be contrarian, the original ESPN hockey.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm also a big fan of the March Madness CBS college sports music.
Yeah.
Also really good, CBS NASCAR, the Daytona 500. That was really good tune also.
FS1, I think. Yeah, I've seen plenty of games on FS1 where they use the old NBA on NBC theme song. Doesn't feel right, though.
No,
Doesn't feel right.
That takes you back to those Knicks games, the Rockets and Knicks, and back
Yes.
94, 93, 95, I guess it was,
Yeah. Takes
Too
me
bad
back
we
to that.
can't play.
Takes me back to that era of disappointing Knicks playoff losses. Yeah. At least they were in the playoffs.
This was a question, or this was something put on another sports site that's quite popular this afternoon, because apparently the SEC music from CBS is going to be leaving us in 2022 because the SEC is moving over to ESPN. And that SEC CBS music is like the theme, or is like the soundtrack of Saturdays in the fall, in the same way that that CBS basketball music is like the soundtrack of March, or at least it used to be. When you're thinking about like watching a 16 and a 1 play at 2:00 in the afternoon on a Thursday, you hear that music and it takes you back to those days.
Mhm.
Those are the things we miss while we're while we don't have it readily available.
It's it's a grind, but Dan, as Jason and I were saying to start the show, at least we're at the point now where you're not only, it's not really a sports related thing, but you're at least hearing from a state and national level. You're at least talking about conversations in terms of restarting and getting back to some sense of normalcy, which will take a while. I'll tell you what, I mean, after all this negativity that's out there and these poor people dealing with coronavirus, it's nice to hear that at least we're having conversations to getting back to some sort of normal at some point, maybe over the next month and a half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's been a tough couple of weeks. They're probably a tough couple of weeks on the offing here, but it's always it's nice to have some light at the end of the tunnel. I think that my 2 cents on the baseball program is that it's it's nice to talk about, but I just don't think it's feasible. And Jason's point, I think it was about the about the union not taking players and sequestering them away from their families in one place is a good point, because I just don't think that's plausible. And, to your point, Seth, you want to get it right. You don't want to rush back, and you don't want to get to something that isn't sustainable, or you're just doing it for the sake of trying to get back. I think you want to get it right. And
Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, and if the first professional football, or rather the first professional sport that we witnessed this year is football, I mean, I think that would be good enough for me, to be honest with you, based on where we're at.
So I have one more house that was sent to me, quarantine house, and
okay,
I'm gonna be a good sport, and because we have a few people that have been dedicated viewers, so I think it's only fair to humor our viewers, right? This is why we do this.
Must be a Jets house or something.
Patriots.
So I'm not sure how to stand by 1 second. Sorry. Give me just a minute. You guys can carry on for a second. I just need to get it going.
This better not be like a Red Sox house thing.
Elevator music playing.
Well,
hey, here's Tiger.
If there is a Red Sox house, I want to be in the one with Josh Beckett and those guys. Mike Timlin drinking beers and eating fried chicken.
The idiots, right? The idiots.
As long as Kevin Millar's not there, I'll be fine.
Malah.
That would be like the worst case scenario, right? Kevin Millar was in your house.
No,
there'd be a few pretty bad scenarios, honestly.
Let's go. What do you got?
You know what? If I can navigate my situation, that would be helpful.
That would be helpful.
But I'm just trying to
learn how to be
a good guy, and no good deed goes unpunished. So this is just gonna be I'm gonna get chastised everywhere for this thing. All right, hang on, it's coming. It's coming.
So's Christmas.
There we go. There's your house, Josh. You happy?
Oh, all right.
Goodness gracious. This is the Grand Central Sports Hub, and I'm putting on a Red Sox house.
My stomach literally just turned.
Holy cow! I have problems with this. This is just bad.
I abstain. I could care less.
It's terrible. House 2, maybe. All right, listen. Pedro's really good on TV. No,
you can pick for me. It's fine. I don't care.
I'm gonna burn them all.
I don't care.
Just.
I mean, for what it's worth, House 2 probably is the the most palatable there. You could, if you're in House 1, you can listen to Nomar talk about how good and how he was so better than Jeter back in the day.
He's unbearable. I can't.
Kevin Millar and Jonathan Papelbon in the same house sounds like the worst thing I've ever heard.
With Manny too.
Johnny Gomes. What? I mean,
Ice K.
I don't know. Yeah,
so loser.
I would, Nathan Eovaldi wouldn't be that bad, I guess, to hang out with.
Yeah, he stole $15 million a year. He's a magician.
There you go. So he could build a big house. I mean, Mike Lowell, but otherwise, I guess Pedro would be fun.
I can't look at this anymore.
It's like you're asking me to choose between acid reflux, diarrhea, or the flu,
or COVID-19.
Yeah, you said it, not me. You said it, not me.
And don't everyone accuse us for not thinking outside the box. We tried, just failed.
All right. Anyway, time to end this fun.
It's been fun.
All right, so we got a big one next week. I'm not even going to show up because Jason's going to be in his glory.
It'd be great.
Bob Gallerstein from Sirius XM. He's been on ESPN Radio New York, and most importantly, had a 9-year run as the public address announcer at Madison Square Garden for the New York Rangers. He was there when the Rangers won the Cup in '94, just like Howie. See, Jason, I keep you engaged.
This is great.
Back-to-back folks who were with the Rangers in '94 when they won it all.
I looking forward to it. We've really, Seth, you've picked out some great guests, so really appreciate it. You want to pop up David's comment real quick? Let's end on. They don't live in houses. They don't deserve a house.
No. The benchmark for for qualifying for
Fox.
no, the benchmark for qualifying for something like this, you have to finish within 10 games under 500. And the Knicks haven't done that.
Knicks are living on the streets.
So
anywhere Anthony Mason is, I would not want to be.
So that's that. No, you have to finish within 10 games of 500 in order to be eligible for this contest.
They don't live in one house.
All righty.
Please join us next week. We'll have another fun show. Seth, today's guest, Howie, was awesome.
Yeah.
Howie was great. He was terrific. You can't beat those stories. They were absolutely fantastic. And I know Bob Gowerstein won't disappoint next week. So thank you to my colleagues at SiriusXM for helping us out and joining us, for Diamond Dan in Hamilton, for JZ in Austin, who's headed to the barbecue pit
right now.
I'm Seth Cantor saying thank you for tuning in to the Grand Central Sports Hub. We'll see you next week at our new time, 8 Eastern. Thanks again. Have a wonderful night. Goodbye.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, it was